Yeah.
All right.
All right, everybody. A couple more people trickling in. But yeah, welcome to week 11. We only have, I think, 4 more official weeks of this semester. So if you're graduating, congratulations, you're almost there. Today we'll be joined by Mr. Kevin Cavanaugh. Very exciting today. I'll let him do his introduction and his little story. But yeah, let's move on, Brian, to the next one. Yeah, so if you have not joined SMIC Plus yet, also a great little private channel that I have in Slack. It comes with the kind of the shirt. You get a stole for an extra $5 if you're graduating. And yes, there's a couple questions this last week. We're going to have those stoles available every single graduating semester from here on out. And yeah, I think another comment on the SMIC Plus is we're going to use a lot of everything from these to kind of finance our in-person. Cross our fingers for next semester, which will be exciting. But yeah, let's move on. If you have not joined our link tree, this is an awesome little tool if you want to, either not really donate, but join the SMIC Plus and kind of support the club. And also has access to our general Slack channel. Hop on, we'll get you onboarded, and also access to our YouTube website, you name it. And really exciting too, we're going to have basically these next upcoming weeks, we're going to have that the FS collab with Dr. Roman. That'll be exciting. And then after that, we're going to kind of segue our way into that SMIC presentation dry run, which we'll be having to close out our SMIC meetings, which would be really cool. I'm sure all the Smith members right now are a little nervous about to see that, but that's okay. You guys got plenty of time.
Yeah, that'll be fun. And then next week we do have Matt Gill from Owl Rock, who's more on the IB side, I believe. So tune into next week for another great guest speaker. But I'll take over from here, Andrew. Thank you. Today's guest speaker, Kevin Cavanaugh, brought to us by the Mutual Connection, Professor Tom Coria, which all of us know here, of course. So Kevin Cavanaugh works at TD Ameritrade, previously worked at Edward Jones, right? A CFP analyst, portfolio manager, very experienced, and we'd like to definitely get into when you started that specific year, which was a very interesting year. But we are very excited to have you on. And without further ado, we'll let you take it away from here. So I'll stop sharing my screen so that we can kind of have the spotlight on you.
Great. Well, I appreciate you guys all joining me. I'm also very excited. I was telling Brian before that, I think that's one of the things that I really missed out in college is having kind of what's that next step after, and understanding kind of, how you make the transition from basically a lifetime of education into turning that into, a valuable career for yourself. And let's be honest, we all, I think, want to make money in the real world. And I think that's kind of the next step. So hopefully my goal with all of this is to give you, a little bit of my experience and kind of some different things that I've learned after about a decade in the industry, a couple different stops, and hopefully help you guys identify some different career paths that might work for you. And I think the other side of it is hopefully you guys will have some questions, and I'm an open book. I'm happy to answer anything I can there. So keep them coming and be thoughtful about those as I'm going through it. So I think I don't have a lot to share with the screen. So I'm just going to go through what my experience is, and I'll kind of just jump into it. So I graduated from University of Oregon, go Ducks. And I, as you probably saw there, I had a history major with a philosophy minor. So I didn't really know what I was going to do. I thought I was going to do law. But when I came out, I was looking at kind of the different things, and I didn't want to go into debt with law school. And I was actually kind of interested in finance because I took a couple classes. So I was able to kind of, go ahead and look into that area after. Now, a couple of things I would say that I think that are helpful immediately after that I would say when you get out of college to potentially consider. So I did bartending immediately after college, for about 6-7 months. obviously it was a lot of fun, help pay the bills. And it gave me time where I felt like I could find a job that's more of a career type of building job than just, something to just make money. So that's one thing I would say is don't be afraid to just get a job initially out of college, pay the bills, give yourself a lot of time to kind of go through and find the right fit for you for that starting job that's really going to be kind of your career builder. So that's one thing that I would say initially that kind of gave me a little bit of flexibility. The other thing I would say that helps out when you first get out is, and this is something I didn't learn until much later, is really leverage your network. I think whenever you're looking at a first time job, I know everyone says it, it's very cliche, but I never liked reaching out to folks, but I think it really is something that, folks that who know you, know your character, know, your work ethic, things like that. There are a lot of times the people that are the best ones to recommend you, and they can get you that opportunity that you need. Maybe they don't get you the job, but maybe they can get you the interview. And I think the way that I would do that when you reach out to folks is not just ask people for jobs, but tell them what you've been doing to kind of prepare for transitioning in the real world. Some of the things that you're focused on, some of the things that, maybe ask them for advice as far as what they would recommend for looking at that. And so that's number two, is I would say leverage your network and just ask questions of folks that are in different industries that you're interested in. Get to know them and ask about, different things you can do to prepare yourself. So I would say so for me, that what I did is I connected with someone at American Funds, who I knew from my past, who was able to go ahead and recommend me and get my resume looked at. So I forwarded that over to them. They were able to go ahead and get that forwarded along to their team. And I applied for the job. So with American Funds, when I came in, I was basically, they call it like a shareholder rep. But essentially what I was doing is I was answering phones and essentially doing almost like a client service role with shareholders as well as advisors, and kind of servicing the accounts, asking different kind of factual based questions that they might have about different account types, things like that. So I would say that was the benefit of that is it got me working for, many of you guys might know American Funds, perhaps you don't, but very large mutual fund company, very well respected in the industry, has a local presence. And for me, I was working in an office where there was a lot of different teams there. They had the finance department, they had the accounting department, they had all the higher ups that are at that one location. And so for me, that was very attractive because it's not like I wanted to be honest, and I didn't want to be a client service rep my whole life, let's be honest, right? So I wanted to get exposure to different aspects of the financial world because I didn't really know what I wanted to do at this point. But I wanted to get exposure and position myself in a company that was respected within the industry and had a lot of different pathways that I could either build off within the company itself or transition into another role within the industry. So that's one thing that I would say when you first start, that is a big benefit of working for a big known corporation. Now there are some drawbacks, and we can talk a little bit about that, but I would say the benefit is that you get a name behind you, that's going to probably give you really good training. They're going to invest, they have the capital that they can invest in you and build you, into kind of that entry level professional and beyond, just with the services that they have in house. And I think that's one thing that is really a beneficial way of starting out in kind of that corporate structure. So I was a shareholder rep there, like I said, for a couple of years. I got promoted a couple of times, and I did some internships around these different departments that I talked about. So they would let you kind of rotate every couple of months. I was able to get, they call it an advisor marketing representative at the time. That name might have changed, but basically what I did in that role is I went ahead and I distributed information to different advisors as far as forms, sales literature types of things for them to interact with their clients. And it was really in that time that I think that's when I was like really kind of seeing behind the curtain as far as what advisors do. So let me back up there because I did want to touch on something that Brian mentioned at the beginning is when I started. So I started right before the crash. So I went live on the phones I think I was probably the middle of August of that year. And as we all know, all hell broke loose in October. And my goodness, it was baptism by fire, to say the least. So that was a tough time. But I think that what it really helped me understand is the differences in the way that advisors approach clients. It really made me understand how important what advisors do is, because I was seeing, I was talking with clients that, were really suffering. And, but I also clients that were very frustrated because they couldn't contact their advisor at a time when, they had just lost 20, 30% or more in the blink of an eye in many cases. So it kind of gave me an insight into what makes a good advisor, what doesn't, just by the way that clients would respond. And it really helped me kind of understand the role that an advisor plays. Not only is just an investment advisor, which I think a lot of people assume, or my friends are always asking me, what's the hot stock, things like that. But I think it's more about understanding your clients and, supporting them. I mean, emotionally, helping them make good decisions, because we all know money's an emotional thing. And I think that's something that time period taught me is what we do is very important. And I think that you have to understand that. And I think take it seriously. And I think that's, man, it was a tough time to go through for a lot of folks, but I'm very happy with the way we came out the other side. So I'm going to stop there. So that's kind of my experience with American funds as far as directly out of college. Before I kind of transition into the second half, I want to just stop there and just see if you guys have any questions. Because I know this is kind of the time when some of you guys are looking at making that transition. So I just want to see if you guys have any quick questions on that transition process that I can address now. And again, we'll have time at the end, but feel free to jump in with any initial questions there, guys.
Yeah. Kevin, I just right off the bat, you're talking about, hey, look, just got out of college. You said psychology and history. What was it?
History and philosophy.
Philosophy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Not psychology. But all right. So, all right, you become a bartender and you're like, all right, what clicked in your head? What was that one moment you're like, okay, this is, how did I get off from doing this to that?
Well, yeah, good question. I think I was already looking at finance a little bit, because I've always been into stocks. I mean, I think that's one thing from a young age. I've always kind of followed different companies, and I've always kind of been interested in companies. I think with finance in general, I knew that obviously that where we live in Southern California, there's a tremendous amount of jobs that are available across that industry. And so I think that's one of the things that really made me look at it, is because I didn't really know at that point which direction I was going to go. I wanted to get something in a position where it gave me a lot of different options as far as career building opportunities. And I could go this way or that. And that was kind of my primary goal with my first job. And I think finance was just something I was naturally interested in. And so it kind of was that fit of a good opportunity with a really, well-respected, good organization with room to grow and access to different aspects of the industry. That's kind of all in that one place. Coupled with the fact that I was genuinely interested in finance. And, for me, I think the beautiful thing about this industry, and I'm sure a lot of you guys who are interested in kind of agree, is, I mean, stuff changes every day. I mean, it's a great thing. I mean, you really feel like you're getting a feel for, the world, and you're kind of tapped into what's going on. You got to stay up on things. And, but I think I don't know, for me, that's an exciting thing. And I think that's always been very attractive to me is, being up on the news, knowing who the movers and shakers are in the economy. And I think that's kind of what led me to think about finance as kind of is an avenue there. So long-winded answer, but did that answer?
No, absolutely. And I think after that, after you landed the position, and it's shareholders rep, that wasn't, the most glorious thing, right? But I think the follow-up, you said, the amazing draw, there's amazing benefit to being in a big corporation, right? You have the name, you have all the resources. They love investing in, newcomers, these, kind of try to make a long-term out of you. But you said there's a major drawback, and I kind of want to make that clear to everybody what the major drawback was that you mentioned.
Yeah, I think the thing is that you're, anytime you tie your wagon to a big corporation, I mean, sometimes they're not as quick to grow as other places. So if I think sometimes with smaller companies that are more nimble, or, they're kind of growth mode, you're catching them early on, things like that. I think sometimes when you attach yourself to a company like that, as the company grows, there's more growth. I think sometimes with corporations, what I've seen a lot of times with other folks in the industry too, is sometimes it takes a while for you to get to where you need to go within the corporation. Now that's not to say all the time, but I think for me personally, I felt like that was going to be a long journey there for me to get to a place that I really want to be career-wise and with what I was doing. So I think the thing with the corporation is going to give you all these benefits. It's going to do all of that. What it potentially, and this is a lot depending on the position, but I would say in my case, one of the drawbacks that I saw is there wasn't a ton of opportunity for me to get to where I want to go from an income perspective with my day-to-day, as far as what I was doing, as far as kind of doing kind of deeper level stuff, I would say. But I don't know. I think does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, it's the kind of the ladder's it's a lot longer than it would be in a smaller kind of boutique place. I totally get it. Yeah, that totally answers it. Right on. Anybody else have any questions?
I think if we go to the next,
we'll move to the next point in terms of time. We want to hear it all.
That's great. All right, so I'll run through the rest of this. So after American Funds, I really didn't, as I mentioned before, I didn't really know where I was going with it there. I didn't feel like I had a lot of growth potential. I knew at that point I'd had about 4 or 5 years of experience there, so I knew I could come back pretty easily and get a job. So I made a decision there to kind of explore different opportunities. I actually fell in love with my now wife at the time. We both kind of left our jobs at that point, traveled Europe, went around for like a couple months, and I knew that I wanted to explore different things, but I wasn't really sure what. And I kind of had an idea of finance or running a business, but I wanted to have something where I had growth potential and really kind of had some upside and some independence as far as my earning potential, things like that. So, I did a lot of different things. I got my real estate license. I, looked at different, I actually tried to start a travel agency online. So I kind of did some exploratory stuff, but ultimately after about a little bit of time doing all of that, I think probably about 6 months, something like that, I transitioned. I went to Edward Jones. So the couple of reasons that I went to Edward Jones that I would say, full service brokerage, if you guys aren't familiar with it, but one, they had a tremendous training program, and I was really starting from scratch, right? So I didn't have a finance degree. I needed someone that was willing to invest in me, and they're a company that was willing to do that. They start you off with a salary, so they give you some type of a base salary for the first couple of years, and then you kind of build your business from there. I like the idea that they had different offices. So, I could go to an office, basically utilize that as I build my business and that type of thing. Now, you guys might already be familiar with the full service model. I'll just kind of briefly go over it with you. Commission structure, basically you're getting your own clients. You're going about, in the case of Edward Jones, the way that I got clients and the way most Edward Jones representatives get clients is you go around, you door knock residential neighborhoods, business to business. You tell them who you are, ask them what they're doing, and you basically get to know folks and win relationships like that. So that's obviously a challenging way to go about it. The benefit is it's tremendous. It's your own business, and when you get a client, although they're signing up with Edward Jones, I mean they're really signing up for you. So you have a little bit of ownership over those clients in that full service realm that perhaps in other areas like I work in now, you don't have that same relationship. So that's what I would say on with Edward Jones. I was there for about 2 years. Through that time, again, I just door knocked, went business to business. I probably got about 55 households or so. But after being about 1.5 years, 2 years into that, I realized pretty quickly that it was going to be hard to build a business. And I wasn't getting, I was spending so much time prospecting, and I was knocking on basically 100 doors a day, or businesses a day, to try to meet people and get new clients, that, I wasn't spending a lot of time doing, in-depth financial planning or doing that. I did build out portfolios for folks, which it was fantastic. I really enjoyed doing that and doing the research behind that, but I wasn't getting enough of the experience with really wealthy clients that I feel like are really important to building a long-term career in financial advising, because I think, that's really where you have tremendous opportunity for career advances, is working with wealthier clients, because especially now it's an asset-based fee. So meaning that the higher net worth, the more money that you're working with as an advisor, the more money that you and your firm are making. So So I wanted to get to that point, and it was very difficult for me to do that with that structure. So I transitioned into TD Ameritrade about 6 years ago, directly from Edward Jones. Now I had to leave all my client relationships behind. And with it, if you're not familiar with the way that it works with TD Ameritrade, it's kind of a different structure. So I'll kind of go through that briefly. So I am in my capacity right now, and I started as a financial consultant initially, where I was working with, I think it was my client base was like folks that had 100,000 to 500,000 with the firm already. And my role was basically to deepen those opportunities, try to have them bring in more capital, either to self-direct on their own or to go ahead and go into, professional management options if they feel like they need help. So that's kind of that role. Then as I transitioned to a senior financial consultant, it's kind of looked different over the years, but most folks are in that, high 6-7 figure range that you're working with. So you're dealing with kind of those higher net worth folks. And that presents more of those planning opportunities. That I think that's really where you get some good experience with it. So when I transitioned to TD Ameritrade, the big difference was they have a set salary. You obviously have a good benefit package, another large corporation. And then you do get basically a quarterly component that's like a bonus component that's based on how much assets you're bringing in, how much of assets you're putting into advice, things like that. And they usually do it on a net basis across your whole book. But I think the biggest difference here is you're going to see more opportunity, certainly more volume. I don't, you're never going to be hurting for people to call in most cases. You're going to have quite a few folks that you're going to be calling on and expected to do. But you're going to get a lot more at bats, but you're not going to have that same level of ownership that you have with, like, if you did like a full service brokerage or something like that. It's, they're TD Ameritrade clients in this case, or, there's a lot of different iterations with the larger firms where they have very similar positions to what I do. But I think that's the biggest thing is you are servicing them and you're truly more of an employee of the company, acting in that advisory capacity for their highest net worth clients is basically what the role is. So that's kind of the way that is kind of looked. And I've been in this role as a senior financial consultant I got promoted about 6 months into my time at TD Ameritrade. So I've been in this role for about 5.5 years. And it's one of the things that I really enjoy about it is I work with all different folks, all different backgrounds. I love hearing people's success stories, whether it be investments or life. I love hearing about their family and getting to know, what's important to them, because I think money, people kind of talk about money, it's like a bad word, but it has a lot of intersections with things that are very important to us. And I think as an advisor, I think that's one of the things that I love about the job is I love getting to know people and what's important to them and doing whatever I can to help them accomplish those goals as quickly as I can and as efficiently as they can. And just kind of being a financial thought partner on a lot of those different avenues for high net worth folks. I think it's, I think I love it. I think that's one of the things I really enjoy. I think there's a couple things that you guys really should consider if you're going the financial advisory route that I just want to be very clear is in any iteration, there's a sales component to what you're going to be doing as a financial advisor in many cases. So you have to be comfortable with that up to a certain degree, right? I don't, a lot of the job is getting to know people and things like that, but you have to be, the way your pay is structured is going to be, in many cases, there's going to be a sales component to that. And I think that's something that you have to be aware of, and you have to understand kind of where your skills lie to align them with the best job in the industry that's kind of going to kind of fit that. And we can kind of go through that with any questions you guys have. But I think a couple years into my role at TD Ameritrade, and I do want to touch on this for folks who are going into the industry, is I did get my certified financial planning credential a couple years back. Challenging test. You do have to go through some education. I actually really enjoyed the education piece myself. The test is doable. If you will have to I put in about 200 hours studying for it outside of the classes. But I really think if you were going to be an advisor in this industry and you want to have a long-term career, I think that's, unless you're going to be an analyst, if you're going to be working with clients, I highly encourage you to do that, because I think more and more the way the industry is going is it's shifting from an advisor being, just an investment recommendations and those types of things, to having other areas where they have to show value. We all know that there's, fees for different investments, and professional management has really gone down as far as the cost versus what it was, let's say 20, 30 years ago. And I think that's a great thing for consumers. But for advisors, you have to find a way to provide, to provide value for these clients that are going to be paying you or your firm a fee. And I think financial planning is one of the easiest ways to do that, because now I can have discussions with my clients about, their estate, what they're doing for taxes this year, and have some kind of color around the full financial picture. And I think with the higher net worth folks that you deal with, the more important that it is that you have that kind of in-depth understanding around the full picture, so you can make sure that you're not, you're helping them and yourself avoid, potential landmines that are out there when you're dealing with big money movements and big decisions. So I would highly encourage folks, if you're interested in this career, I think that's a great. And for me personally, what was great about for myself is TD Ameritrade and many large corporations, as many of you know, will pay for a portion of that education. So they pretty much cover the entire cost of me going ahead and doing that. And so a lot of times you have to work for a company for a year or two to get that. But I would say, especially as you guys start building your careers, if this is something that you are interested in pursuing, I would highly encourage you to at least take the classes. I think they're useful classes for anyone, whether you're a financial professional or not. And then I think beyond that, I think it gives you, way into the industry, and it's a great way to position yourself for a successful career. And I think that's kind of the way more and more that I see, especially with my firm and a lot of the other wirehouses, that's starting to become more of an expectation for the folks that are dealing with the higher net worth folks. And so I would say if this is a career that you're serious about, I would certainly consider that as an option. And as tough as it was to get, I never regret one moment that I spent with getting that, because I think it's a very important thing to have. And I think clients who are in the know really know that. And I think even folks that aren't in the know, they can recognize the skills that you gain from going through that process and the knowledge that you gain, and it makes you better for your clients. So, but I know that's a lot of talking for me. So I'm sure I probably left some stuff out, but I want to make sure that I give you guys time for any questions that you have and about your careers. I do have some experience with different areas of finance. I have some of my friends that are CFAs who work in, with actually portfolio construction. As I mentioned, I did a little bit at Edward Jones there. But I'm happy to answer your questions, not only about the financial advising industry, but also about just the financial industry in general in whichever ways that I can. So any initial questions there that pop to mind for folks?
Yeah. If you don't mind if I ask a couple more,
yeah,
just
please.
at the top. You talked about when you were with Edward Jones, right? You said, hey, it was great, but I kind of got tired of going door to door, and you kind of loved building these portfolios. And it's funny that you brought that up, because you're making a distinction between the CFP and kind of a CFA. So maybe you can give some more kind of light on that whole aspect of it.
Yeah, great point. So I think the biggest thing is when you're talking about, and you guys might already be familiar with this, but I'll just kind of quickly go over it, is basically with a CFP, I mean, you're really spending a lot of your time. That course is really, those courses, I should say, are focused on financial planning. So it's really about doing financial planning for folks, understanding kind of how the integration, as I mentioned, of kind of estate and tax law into financial planning and how those kind of interact. And while it is going to go into some things as far as portfolio construction, it's going to be much more focused on the elements of financial planning and those types of things than it is as far as like really breaking down, investment formulas and things of that nature. Now, there's some questions on the test that'll have you calculate standard deviation of different investments and kind of get a little bit into the weeds, but it certainly is not meant to be really in-depth look as far as portfolio construction. That credential is more for financial planning in general. CFAs are much more focused on actually looking at investments themselves, making specific investment recommendations in portfolio construction. Most CFAs, for the most part, will work internally within like a wealth advisory firm or a mutual fund company. They spend a lot of their times working with the decision makers as far as different investment opportunities, putting together different pieces of information for analysis or going over different pieces of analysis. And they're kind of more of that behind the scenes folks, which I think is tremendous. It's very interesting. I think if you're selling, for me, it was very important for me. I really like working with clients. So a certified financial planner tends to do that a little bit more than CFAs in most capacities. And I really like that interaction and getting to know the client and kind of the ongoing relationship that a certified financial planner usually has. But I think for a lot of folks, like I have one of my buddies who he's the complete opposite. He really likes to deal with the investments. He wants to spend a lot of time doing the analysis and doesn't really care he doesn't even really like sometimes he has to jump on the phone. He doesn't really care to do a lot of the portfolio reviews and things like that. He really prefers to just deal with the investments and kind of the behind the scenes stuff. So if you're someone like that, the CFA is a very challenging test, but it's also extremely well respected. And if you think you want to deal with more of the investments and the investment construction piece, that's probably a pathway to at least look into, as I think that's probably something that's better suited for someone that's really just focused or primarily focused on investment construction and selection. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's absolutely.
What else you guys got for me?
I have a question.
Oh, great.
So which companies value like the CFA the most or require CFA exam?
Yeah, I would say so. If you're looking at CFA, primarily it's going to be CFA, the required ones, that would probably be mutual fund companies, would probably be one of the main places. Wealth advisory firms, they're referred to as RIAs, registered investment advisors, who are basically fee-only advisors. Usually they have high minimums that you deal with. So, might have like $1 million or more to have them do the advice. A lot of them will run unique stock strategies or, something that's kind of different than modern portfolio theory or more of like an asset allocation model. And for folks like that, it's very important that they have those CFAs in-house, or even folks that run asset allocation models. They want to make sure if you're in the business of any type of portfolio construction, usually for a mutual fund company, an REA/wealth advisory firm, those are usually where CFAs are going to be found. Now, some folks in the independent advisor world will have both, like we'll have a CFP and a CFA. So that way they can basically be, the investment advisor and the selection piece where they can do that on their own, along with having the financial planning capacity. And they can do that in one person. I think that's tough to do just because there's a lot of time, but I think that you're seeing that more and more. But I would say those are primarily the places I would say where you see CFAs is anything that's portfolio construction. So mutual fund companies, maybe even ETFs or something like that, or internally speaking at either, one of the big brokerage firms, or like I said, one of the smaller boutique wealth advisory firms. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, you got it.
So
Thanks. Oh, Andrew, you want to go?
yeah, so I have another question that you brought up, and I think this is on a lot of people's minds is when you log into any of your brokerage accounts or even your banks now, you're seeing a lot of robo advisors.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me, it's kind of scary. You walk in, you're like, uh-oh, like is somebody's job on the line when, you can have a robot, doing all these calculations for you. What are your thoughts on, the kind of the advent of these robo advisors in terms of wealth management?
Well, to be honest, I think it's, in many cases, I think it's a great thing for consumers, and the fact that, I think that you can get professional level advice that really you had to have a very large portfolio before to get, and you can get that for, with some of these places, you can get it for a couple of bucks, it's amazing. So I think it's a great thing for consumers. I think what we're all dealing with, and I think you could say this about pretty much any industry, is right now we're going through a technological revolution, right? The iPhone came out in 2007 and look at where we are today. So things are moving very quickly. And I think no matter what career path you're going to go into, you have to be adaptive and you have to understand where things are going, how, again, and this kind of goes back to, I think for me, why I went and got the CFP is how are you going to provide value to your clients? You know, I don't think a robo advisor is for everyone. Personally, I don't. You know, I think there's a lot of different moving parts, especially to deal with higher net worth individuals. And I think that while that might be a fine thing for most folks, I think there's a lot of other folks that are going to want a little bit more attention to detail. And because the cost of making mistakes when you're dealing with large portfolios is such that, you know, you want to make sure if you're getting good value for your management fee and you avoid those mistakes, then the fee itself is well worth it, even outside of investment performance, right? So, so I think you have to be thoughtful about what you're going to bring to the table in the industry. And I think, you know, I think investment selection, things like that, I think there'll always be jobs where there's going to be some human integration, but I think we're all going to learn how to work with technology and have to understand where we can add that human value. And I think for me personally, the way that I think about that as an advisor is, you know, we've got to be the computers are great at putting numbers together, things like that. But sometimes, like with problem solving and really talking out situations, weighing pros and cons, things like that. You know, oh, what if we did this and we kind of leverage it like that? Those conversations, I think a lot of folks really value having a human interaction. And I think that's where you have to live if you're an advisor. You have to live in that reality and you have to prepare for those types of conversations, perhaps more so than you did in the past, because I think that's where your value is really going to lie as the industry kind of moves forward. But
Hey,
that's
sorry, Kevin.
Oh, yes. Hey,
may I add a couple of points to Kevin's comments on this robo thing? First of all, Kevin, thank you so much for being here. I was in another meeting. I apologize for being late.
Great.
Talk about robo advisors. I just met a friend. He's asked him, how are you invested? He also happens to be a relative, so I can ask that. And he's using a robo advisor. So the robo advisor, he's put himself profile as an aggressive investor for long-term growth because he's young. The robo advisor put 30% in US, 30% in emerging, 30% in developed international, and 10% in bonds because he's an aggressive long-term, so don't need bonds.
Right.
I was shocked by that because based on the work we have done in our classes, right, we can't dream of a day where Europe is worth 30% of our money, right?
Right.
And developed international is mostly West Europe and some Japan. So there you go. Well, that didn't seem right. The second thing, and this is an important one, is robo-advisors are new, especially over the last 5 years or so. They have not been tested to a real nail-biting bear market and how markets react during that time. We don't know how the robo funds will react during that. It is not tested yet.
Yeah, I think Kevin, you said it perfectly. You said landmines and money movements. I think you summarized it like that. And so that's a good point.
Yeah, I don't know, guys. I think, like I said, I think big time when you're dealing with larger sums of money and you're really trying, I think it's great if you just want to get money to work, right? And you don't have the time and energy and you're just trying to get the portfolio going and you just want to get invested. I think it fits the bill for a lot of those folks. And I understand that. But I do think if you're trying to be thoughtful and you're concerned about, oh, what happens if they sell out of this and I have a tax implication there, and there's a lot of nuances as you deal with larger and larger portfolios that I think that you really have to have someone that's tending to those needs. And I don't know, in my opinion, that's not what those are really designed to do. They're not really designed for that type of investor. So, I think it's, like I said, I think it's the whole industry is shifting, but it's, I don't see the need for advisors going away anytime soon. Although I do think certainly that, the role, like many other roles, is going to change and evolve as we go forward. But I still think there's a tremendous demand out there. And I think if you go on any job board, which I also would recommend folks to do, is, go search for the job that you potentially want to get and see what their qualifications are. And so you can kind of build to that or have that in mind as you're doing it. But you can see there's a ton of advising jobs out there across the board right now. And I think there's a lot of demand for it out there in a lot of different capacities, depending on which direction you want to go. But what else you guys got for me?
I also think it's entirely possible that maybe someone that's like just started in a career and is using a wealth advisor, robo advisor, maybe once they, as they get further in their career and increase their net worth, then maybe they transition to a real human advisor, and that maybe just propels the industry. So
yes, exactly. Great point. I do think that more and more people, and I think you guys have probably noticed it too, whether it's what happened with GameStop here recently or whatever, I think there's a lot of conversation about finance. And I think it's really, with the elimination of commissions, robo advisors, I think you're dealing with a much larger swath of people. And I think it's a great point by you. That you have more people that are interested in that and engaged in it probably than ever before. And I think there's a lot of different ways that those people are going to need support. And it's not going to be, I think people want to have a customized approach when it comes to a big portion of their net worth. I know I certainly do. I don't want to have a cookie cutter thing. I want to have something that, just like if you go to the doctor, you don't want to have someone who's going to give you the standard. You want to have someone who's actually going to look at you and hear, what are your concerns? What's your family history? Not just, tap you on the knee. Hey, it looks like you're good to go. I think you have to have kind of thoughtful things with some of this stuff. And I think finance certainly is one of those topics. So.
Yeah. I'll go ahead, Adam.
Okay. I have a question. So you had brought up that, you did, I guess it was about like 2 years with Edward Jones.
Right.
I thought that was really interesting because I've kind of looked at like advisor development programs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Edward Jones, obviously they're very well known like down in this area. And then you have those that are kind of like through JP Morgan or maybe like Merrill Lynch, where it's not exactly you building your own.
Right.
It's more of like coming in as a piece to their machine,
Right.
So
yes, exactly right.
what is your opinion on like those development programs, I guess, compared to like what you went through with Edward Jones?
Yeah, great question. I think I'm glad you asked that, because I didn't touch on that earlier. But I think so when you're making that decision, right? The benefit of going with like a Merrill or a bank, or even like what I do, where I'm in like a TD Ameritrade or Fidelity, Charles Schwab, one of those bigger places, is it's just like what you said. You're going to get more opportunity, right? You're going to get clients that are there. They're already clients. In many cases, I think most people feel like that's an easier conversation. It's like basically a warm conversation with a client rather than a cold. So you think you have more of those warm contacts. But I think the trade-off there is you don't have any ownership of those clients. So if you're interested in building like a long-term business and a long-term book, that's not the role that's really going to lead to that. But I do think in my estimation, the benefits of it are that you're going to get, which I think are very important when you start out, is you're going to get a lot of volume and you're going to get a lot of at-bats. And I think that's the key, is you want to have a lot of at-bats so you can kind of build your skills. And I think with those at-bats, if you're able to convert them, then I think there's probably a quicker path with those Merrills and the bank routes to maybe make a higher level of income right off the bat. I haven't looked at those, but I would say usually those ones are going to start you off probably with some type of salary. I mean, entry level, probably, I don't know, neighborhood of 30 to 50 or something like that. And then they would probably give you some upside potential. Like I was talking about, we'll have like quarterly bonus structures that are based on different flows, versus if you go with a full service brokerage, the benefit there is you're going to get ownership of the business. You're going to get support of the back office. You're going to be really totally independent. You're less of an employee, more of like an independent contractor in many cases, is the way that your day-to-day goes. So you're going to have more flexibility to run things how you want to do it and do what you like. But I think with that, you've got to make your own opportunities. And I think if you're going to go into the full service world, what I would say is you have to either be willing to really hustle and grind it out, and have a tremendous network of folks that you can pull on. Because I think a lot of this full service brokerages, when you first set out, they're kind of thinking that you're going to pull on friends and family there. So if that's one avenue for the people to do it. You got to hustle, like I said, and get out. I'm knocking on 100 doors a day to make it work. And then the other thing is, this is what I think a lot of the people in the full service realm do very well, is you have to find a niche. My mentor did public employees. He worked with, folks from like the police department, the fire department, and he really knew those public plans. And so he really had a fraternity of folks, that really gravitated to him, and he got a tremendous referral network as a result. So if you are going to be in that realm, I think it's important that you find a niche, and it's really like you're building a business more so with the full service model than with like the Merrills or the banks, as you mentioned. It's like you said, you're going to get more volume. You're going to get kind of that initial experience. But as far as building like your own business, that's going to be more of like a quarter to quarter type of pursuit than it is kind of this long-term business building that you would see more like the full service or potentially like a wealth advisory role in many cases. But does that answer your question?
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you very much.
You got it.
I have a question just about when you talked about Edward Jones and how you built up, I think you said almost like 55 clients.
55 households. Yep.
55 households. And it was interesting that you said that once you moved over to TD Ameritrade, you had to, because obviously they're part of Edward Jones officially, and you had to kind of leave those clients behind. It'd be interesting to hear kind of like how you thought about that and went about like, leaving those clients behind, or just because you probably legally had to. But
yeah, I mean, it was, I gotta be honest, it was tough. I mean, because, you put in a lot to get those 55 households. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it takes a lot of work. And it was hours, days knocking on doors and doing that. And I think especially in that role, because people, I was a young guy, had a full head of hair back then. And, people were taking a chance on me a little bit. And I really appreciated that. I wanted to give those clients everything I had because, they trusted me going door to door, and, that's tough. And I think that it was really hard because I built pretty, even though it was a long time, I built pretty in-depth relationships with a lot of those folks. So one of the things that I did have the opportunity to do that I'm very grateful for is they let me transition those folks to people within the company there. So I handpicked different advisors to move them to. But I think that that's one thing that it was a very hard thing to move on from. Now there are, depending on your state, there's different non-disclosures and things like that. I certainly could not have reached out to those clients and said, hey, I'm over at this new firm, come over. There's different stipulations as far as how they can reach out to you. But you're certainly, in many cases, I know for myself, I was prohibited from reaching out to any of my prior clients for at least, I think it was a year or something like that. That being said, I think I was working in a different role, right? I think, to be quite honest, a lot of my households wouldn't even meet the requirements of what my role was starting out, because I had folks that were taking a chance on me, and, I was dealing with much smaller quantities of money than, what I'm dealing with, today or even in that role. So I think some of those, it was inevitable that I was going to have to leave them behind. Other ones I just had to, it was a tough decision, but, I think that for me, it's kind of what I mentioned with the last question as well, as it was really something where I felt like I had to make a career decision, and I was desperate to get more volume. And I felt like that is what was really holding me back, is I wasn't getting enough face-to-face interactions with clients. And that was really hampering what my opportunity was for advancement, for pay, all that, those different things. So, for me, it was a tough decision, but I think when I looked at the financial aspect of it, and I kind of took into the full thing, that's the reason that I ultimately decided to do it. But it's that's one thing I will say that is great about when you're building your own business, and in that capacity, is those relationships that you have with clients are a little bit different. And I certainly miss some of those relationships. I think I've gotten some now to that level, but it's it's a little bit different from that perspective, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Thank you for that answer. We might have time for like one or two more. If anybody else has a question.
I have a question real quick. What are the exit opportunities for financial advisors?
Sorry, say that one more time. What was it? What opportunities?
The exit opportunities, like if you want to switch jobs, like what are?
Yeah. Good question. So I think that it's different for what role you're in. So I think with the full service model, like the Edward Joneses or Raymond James, where you have like a little bit of ownership over your book, typically what will happen is some of those, like Edward Jones, I'll speak about that. They had a program, they call it like the Good Night program, basically. And they would basically pay you as an experienced advisor to transition some of your clients to, like, let's say like an up and coming advisor who would then take over those relationships. They would pay you basically for doing that if you did it within the company. Other places, what you would do is there's a lot of advisors out there where they will build up their books over their career, and then they will sell that book to another advisor who, you know, wants to, if you're like an independent advisor and you want to get new clients, but you don't want to be doing the door-to-door stuff, it's an easy way to get a book of clients that you can purchase and have that moved over to you. So the benefit of being more of an independent style advisor, whether it's as a totally independent or perhaps in these full service, is that the book you're building at the end of your career is something that you can usually get some type of monetary value for, and you'll get paid on, in addition to the commissions you made over that period of time. Whereas like something where you're in more of a, like you said, if you're in like a Merrill or TD Ameritrade or whatever, there's not, you know, when folks move on from this position, they say goodbye and you know, the clients stay with the company. You don't have any ownership of those clients, you know, so you're basically moving on. You can do whatever you want after that, but you can't contact those same clients for a period of time after. You can't reach out to them proactively. So that's another thing to keep in mind, is the latter part of your career is certainly is much more beneficial financially to have a book that you can kind of pull from and potentially sell to another advisor or within your firm. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, I have also a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Do you know how can someone transition from like a finance industry or like career to real estate career after like 4 or 5 years of working in finance?
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of really, you know, I think some different opportunities that you could potentially look at that might fit the bill. And that I don't have a lot of experience in that area, but real estate investment trusts, so REITs. I think that's one area where people really value having financial background and then going into real estate. You know, I think beyond that, I think there's a lot of different real estate groups that you could probably join. It is possible to have real estate within certain like investment accounts, like IRAs and things like that. I think that's not a popular thing that you see, but it is something that I'm seeing a little bit more of clients look into, especially in Southern California with real estate. So there's very strict stipulations on how you would do that, and there's not a lot of companies that support it. But I would say that's a growing part of the industry that you could potentially look at, and there might be specific wealth advisory firms that focus in the real estate space that you could apply to. But yeah, I don't know. That one is a little bit tricky. I'd have to really look at that. But I would say those would be the two that would come to mind. At the top is a specifically focused like wealth advisory or RA firm that focuses on real estate investments or real estate investment trust potentially.
Guys, I have
Thank you.
sorry to interrupt again. I have a class at 1, so I need to run. Again, thank you, Kevin. I'll just make the following comment regarding careers. If you are a geek and you like to dig into numbers and understand what would be the write-off they had, what would it have been if they would have paid 42 times EBITDA instead of 38.7 times, and then what the EPS would be if the GDP growth was 2.7 instead of 2.5, given the leverage. You want to get a CFA and become an internal analyst.
Exactly.
If you like, wait, I understand all that stuff, but that's not how I want to spend 12 hours a day doing. I like to talk to people. I like to meet people. I'm really good with people, and I like the people side. Then you want to go into wealth management, into feel like what Kevin is doing right now, because that is less geeky numbers and more soft skills of people skills. If you look at our class in SMIC, we spend a lot of time on how it's going to come across to the client, right? After we've done the geeky number stuff. So
That's right.
People skills, you want to work with people, do this part. You want to be in your office locked up for 12 hours doing on numbers and figuring out where management screwed up, go into the CFA route. Okay. Thank you again, guys.
Well said. Great point.
Thank you.
That was wonderful. Extremely well said. I think I couldn't agree more though. I think that's what I would say is I couldn't agree more. I think that's what it's all about. And but yeah, I think the biggest thing, guys, that I would say, I wish someone would have told me this when I first get out, is just, I mean, you guys have this opportunity where you're going out in the real world, just explore, you know, ask questions to folks, you know, do what you're doing right now, where you're hearing, you know, different careers that people, different pathways that people take. And I think, you know, your 20s is all about just finding your path. I mean, it doesn't mean it's everything. So, but yeah, anyways, I appreciate all your guys' time. Anything that I can be helping out with, or any other questions you guys have before I let you all go?
I think it's a great place to cut it there. We really appreciate the conversation today. You know, it's very daunting for us, especially right now. And you know, coming out into a virtual world, maybe we're coming back, who the heck knows, but we really, really appreciate it. So thank you. Thank you, Kevin.
Hey, thanks guys. Really appreciate it. Good luck, everyone. Hope you guys
Thank you,
kill
Kevin.
it out there.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks. Take care.
You too.
See ya. All right, I'm gonna stop recording now. Thank you to everyone that joined.